This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
Brett Casavant, and I live in Whitman, Massachusetts.
Okay. So we're going to start with some questions. First of all, where did you grow up?
In Weymouth, Massachusetts.
And what was your childhood like?
It was pretty fun. I did a lot of stuff, extreme sports stuff like skateboarding, rollerblading, rock climbing, ice climbing, not baseball and stuff like that. So,
what did you want to be when you grew up?
Initially, I wanted to be a record producer or sound engineer for bands and stuff like that. I was in a band, and I wanted to keep doing that. That's what I thought I would do, but never did.
Why the military?
I wanted to be a better person. I had graduated high school, and my college misplaced my information, so my college left a message on my answer machine saying that we're sorry we lost your information, so you can't start in the fall semester, but you're more than welcome to apply again for the spring semester. I was really upset about that. I got an early acceptance to college when I was a junior in high school, and so I thought I was all set, ready to go. And so when they told me that, I became an unemployed loser in the fall time, and try to do some work here and there, but I didn't have anything steady, so I couldn't even get gas from my car, and I kind of felt like a loser, and so I kind of wanted to be something better than myself, so I figured what better place than the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm. And how did your family react to your decision to enlist in the military?
My mother cried because I didn't tell anybody beforehand. I just kind of called up the recruiter. I said, "Where are you?" This is 2002, so this is like ancient history. There's 411. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like on your phone, the landline, the one with a cord on it. Call 411. It's information. I said, "Where's the closest recruiting station?" They told me the number. I called him up. I said, "Where are you?" And he told me. I went there, and I just signed the paperwork, made it really easy for him, and so I came home, and the following day I had to go to her station in Boston to take like a test, a medical test, and all that type of stuff. So I needed my birth certificate and social security card for my mom. So the following day, when I was going, I caught my parents before they left for work. I said, "I need this." My mother said, "Why?" And I told her, so she started crying, and my father was leaving for work. He comes in and he said, "What's wrong?" And my mother said, "Oh, your son joined the Marine Corps." And so then he just saluted me. He's like, "All right, I got to go to work," and left. And that was about it for them. They were kind of very nervous and hesitant. The war in Iraq, the war hadn't started at all, and so they were still nervous. So not well, but not bad. They were surprised because I surprised them, but they were supportive.
Why the Marines?
Because they're the best. I didn't really. I wanted to, if I was going to join the military, I'd join the best of them. And my opinion was just the Marine Corps at the time. I didn't realize it, or I didn't remember, but I guess my father's father was in the Marine Corps as well. But I didn't remember that, or I didn't know it at the time. I found out later, but I just thought the Marine Corps was the best of the. And it is. So.
Mm-hmm. Who in your family was in the military before you?
Well, my paternal grandfather, who was in the Marine Corps during the Korean War. My Uncle Joe, who was also my godfather. I think he forgot that. he's in the Air Force, or was in the Air Force at the time, and that was really it. Like my maternal grandfather was as well. Geez, he was in the Navy. Some of his brothers were during World War II. So, yeah. So that's it. Yeah.
Nice. What was the last thing you did before leaving for service?
That's a good question. What did I do? I remember eating a lot of food because I knew boot camp was going to be like no food. Nothing special, really. I just kind of try to be very nonchalant about it as much as I could.
What was boot camp like?
In hindsight, it was awesome, and I would do it again. But at the time, it was horrible. It was 13 weeks. So the Marine Corps has the longest boot camp or basic training of any other branch of service, and it's like 13 weeks. So it's 3 months and 1 week, and it was very challenging. It tests everybody to the limits, no matter how good a shape you're in or whatever. It'll push you to your limits. But I would love to do it again because I need to lose some weight and get in better shape. But it was interesting. You learn a lot about yourself, what you can and cannot do, and you get a lot of friends. I'm still friends with a couple of guys I was there with, and my senior drill instructor. So you have a senior drill instructor who's in charge of the other ones, and then we had 2 other drill instructors. So my senior one, the one in charge, he lives in Attleboro, Massachusetts now. So I still keep in contact with him, and it was fun in a not so fun way.
So describe a typical day in the military, in the Marines.
Okay. Well, I was active duty Marine Corps infantry. So that's kind of what I pictured the Marine Corps to be, but I think it's like less than 1% of the Marine Corps is infantry, or a very small percentage is. So I was stationed initially at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is near Emerald Isle in the Outer Banks, kind of in that general area. And so if we, in the States, what we wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, go, and we would do physical training every day. We'd change it up every day, but go on at least like a 5-mile run, and then do other physical things like push-ups and pull-ups and things like that, just every single day to make it different. And then get back, quickly shower, change, and then we would do some sort of training throughout the day. Like close quarters training, like going through a house or a building to clear it out. And that was one of my secondary jobs. It's called CQB, Close Quarters Battle. I was a CQB instructor, so I would be teaching them, all my other Marines, how to go through a house or a building, and we'd use our barracks as a easy one, and go through and clear it out like a SWAT team type of stuff. And then you kind of get lunch whenever, and then you might practice like marching. We call it drill in the Marine Corps, the whole marching thing. And then you kind of wait till somebody tells you can go home or get off. If you live in the barracks, it's kind of like you're always at work. Luckily, I was married, so I could leave and go to my own house. Some of it's a lot of hurry up and waiting. You just clean in weapons a lot that are already cleaned, like a rifle or a machine gun. For me, it was a machine gun. You just clean it, or you clean your room that's already been cleaned. So that was fun. But you're always the goal is to always be learning stuff or reinforce stuff you already know. So if you can't, sometimes you go on field exercises, go into the woods, and do practice like some sort of warfare type of stuff out in the field, or land navigation, like map and compass work, which I loved for some reason. Always try to stay busy in learn as much as you can, or reinforce what you've learned. So that's during when you're not deployed.
So when you were deployed, what was it like living so far from home?
At times it could be really hard. I think boot camp helped with that a lot because it was 13 weeks away from home, and for most of the guys that I was there with, it was the longest time that they had ever been away from home, or they'd never been away from home at all. I had been away for a week at a time, or maybe when I was younger. But for a lot of people, it was the first time they'd ever been away from home. So they kind of helped prepare me. It was a little hard because I was there when the war first started. So they didn't have communication set up. And I know later on down the line, they had everything in the world available to people. Like my friend went towards the end of the war in Iraq, and he was like FaceTiming with his wife or Skype. And I wrote home to my first letter home to my wife was I ripped a piece of cardboard off of the box of MREs, the food that we eat, the meals ready to eat. And I ripped a piece of the cardboard off and made the front look like a postcard. And on the back side, I wrote to her, "I'm safe, don't worry about me." And we sent that in with like a bag that was supposed to be mailed out. She ended up getting it, but that was my level of communication. So it was a little, you get a little homesick, but the trick is to like stay busy and not think about it. It kind of helps you get through it.
Describe your favorite experience from your time serving.
My favorite experience from my time serving? That's like a good question. A lot of fun times. Some I can remember more than others. But most saddest, I don't know. That's hard. I was trying to think of, we got called up for some reason to do search and rescues for Hurricane Katrina. And so we had just come back from our second deployment in Iraq, and we were doing training. And the Marine Corps does these things, so infantry units do these things where like one unit is set up to do red alert, where you can get called up to go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. You have to be there within 24 hours. And they rotate it. And so my unit was on air alert, and Hurricane Katrina hit. And so we are called to go. And I was part of the advanced party, so you have to be there within 12 hours. So the president can call on the Marine Corps. It's the only branch. He called the Marine Corps and say, "You need to be there," and we go right away before Congress approves it. So he doesn't need congressional approval. And so when Hurricane Katrina hit, President Bush said, "Go down there." And so we went down there. Marines aren't authorized to work in the United States or would carry weapons and stuff. So it was a little weird. That's more of like a National Guard Reserves type of a thing to do. We're used to like fighting wars, and all of a sudden they're asking us to do search and rescues. So to go into New Orleans and see all this disaster in our own homeland and help people out, and rescue people, it was great. It was a challenging thing. It was new, but it was to work within the United States and help our own people. It was cool.
What was friendship like during your service?
It was great. You become best friends with people you met, and it's like you're instantly like best friends who are great. You know each other's life stories. And there are a few people I know that were my best friends like for long periods of time. But you just like share everything with them, and do everything, and you know the most intimate details of their lives, just because either you're so bored that at times you just talk, or something happens, like when you almost die, you almost get killed, and the two of you I remember like this one kid I barely knew, we almost got blown up, and he and I just started talking, and it was just like, you just kind of let everything out. And so the tightest friendships you'll ever have. There are people I haven't talked to in maybe 10 years, but I know that if we met, we'd talk like nothing has changed, and I could go to their house if I needed to. I could stay at their place, and it's like your lifelong friendships, no matter how often you talk afterwards. So it's the best times of friendships I've ever had are from the military.
What did you do in your off time?
I don't remember. I didn't have much off time. It feels like that. At first I was living in the barracks, and so I was just kind of, there were a lot of guys were drinking beers, but I wasn't legal, so I didn't do that. I wasn't 21 at the time. Then when we got married, we didn't live with each other until we were 2 years. We were married for over 2 years until we moved in together. I think our first 2 years of our marriage, we saw each other if we totaled everything up, maybe 4 months worth of time. Our first 2 years of marriage. So when we finally got married, we had bought a house down there. So it's kind of like doing housework stuff. That was about it. Nothing really fun. It's kind of, I didn't have a lot of off time, really.
What was the most difficult decision you had to make while you were deployed?
There's a lot of difficult decisions, but one that happened quite a bit was I was in charge of a few people, but knowingly placing my best friend in a position that I knew he could very well be killed, but it was a leadership decision that had to be made, and so that's where the friendship thing gets really hard to manage in the military. I was in charge of him, so the decision had to be made, and I had to put him in harm's way. So that was probably, it weighed heavily on me. But, you know.
What was the most dangerous aspect of your role in the military?
I was a high value target, what they call, because since I was a machine gunner, historically the enemy will always want to take machine gunners out, because the high rate of fire of the bullets and stuff, or whether it's just a normal rifle, isn't all that bad. So anytime I was doing my job, it was challenging. We're trying to manage the challenge of not being a target as well.
Could you describe the scariest moment during your service?
That's hard. There's a lot of scary decisions. The one that was just when bombs are coming in, or mortars, it's, from the sky and coming down. You feel most helpless because you can't see your enemy. They could be firing these things off from a mile away or longer. So you feel very vulnerable and helpless. That was scary because you don't know when it's going to happen. But if someone's shooting at you, you kind of know what's going to happen. But most scared I ever was when I was in a porta potty, and we were getting incoming fire all around, like to the left and right, and I was having pieces of shrapnel come in to the porta potty, like dent on the inside, and I was like, this is not how I want to die in a porta potty in the middle of Iraq. And so that was probably the most scared I was, because I was trapped kind of in a porta potty, almost dying. So yeah, that was it.
How long would you go without talking to your family?
Months, or at least a month. My first deployment, it was about a month. We didn't get letters back and forth. We did take naval ships over to Iraq, and then obviously in back. Sometimes they had communication, like telephone or email. So I was able to email people so my parents were too old to understand email. So, but I emailed like my sister and my Uncle Leo. So my first one, besides my wife, they were like my saving grace, was talking to them. And even on my second deployment, being able to talk to them via mail or email. Sometimes we get email set up. They have certain phone lines and things set up. But communication was great, but it could be a curse sometimes. just because it makes you think too much.
What was your biggest health scare during your service?
When well, there's two. Once when like my truck got blown up and I lost consciousness for a while, and I wasn't bleeding, but my head. So I have now is like traumatic brain injury, but that was like at the time I didn't. When I was like kind of coming to, I didn't know if I had all my body parts or whatever the case may be, or if I wasn't bleeding. It was just the concussive force that threw me off, and then that. But then when I injured my back, when I injured my back, that was it. I couldn't walk. Well, my legs weren't working, so I thought I was going to be paralyzed or something. Luckily, I'm not. But so that was it.
What was your least favorite aspect of your job?
The unknown. Sometimes you just told what to do and you don't know why, or kind of have to. People tell you to hurry up for something, and you just hurry up and wait, and you just wait around forever. I just didn't like the unknown.
What was the weather like where you served?
Horrible. It was, I think at one point it was 135 degrees, and we're fully clothed, obviously with the camis or camouflage utilities, and then we have our flak jacket on and helmet, and that just like traps all the heat in, and then I'm carrying all the other stuff. So I was carrying like twice my body weight in gear on my back, plus all fully clothed, and it was like 100 something degrees out. It's horrible. And so I just fully sweat through everything. And then the one night I remember I was freezing to death, or I felt like I was freezing. And we have our medic, our corpsman. He was always keeping track of the weather. And I asked him, it was the middle of the night, and he was up. And I said, "Doc, what's the temperature?" Because I was shivering. He's like, "It's 85 degrees out." And I felt like I was freezing to death. But it was a 50-degree drop in temperature, so it's like going from 90 to 40. So I'm like, it was weird. It really threw me off. But I hate the heat, so I was miserable the whole time. Felt like a hairdryer blown in your face.
Describe what type of food you ate in the military.
Gross food. They had the MREs, meals ready to eat, and there's like 24 varieties, and they're all gross. It's like country captain chicken, which I never knew was a thing. The beef and mushrooms. They had these, and everything was like fortified. So if you get these and you are in the field and you have nothing to eat but those, they really like stuff you up. And so like you can't go to the bathroom forever, and that was like annoying. So, but they come with like crackers or like cheese spread, and so I would mainly eat that type of stuff. Or I'd bring like beef jerky with me, or have people send it to me if I was overseas. It was really gross, but I tried a bunch of different things in Iraq. I don't know what it was. The one time I did not try it, it was good. I lucked out because my friend got dysentery, so I was glad I did not eat what he ate. But on the way back from the first deployment, we stopped in different countries in the Mediterranean area, so got to try a lot of different foods. It was pretty. Well, that was gross and bland.
What experience from your service affects you the most today?
Getting injured. I feel it physically, and then mentally too. It took me out of the fight, and so physically it's just constant pain, and then mentally it's just a lot of stuff. So just getting injured. Yeah.
What advice would you give to a young person thinking of entering the military?
It was the best decision I've made. Made me a better person. There are a lot more opportunities in the military than you might think. I thought that the infantry was what the military was all about, but it's such a small percentage of what is out there mean, I prefer the Marine Corps, but I respect all branches of service. And you can do anything and set you up for anything in the world, and it's incredible. Like my first squad leader, who was in charge of me and other teams and stuff, we were in the infantry. He was a machine gunner, and he was just a really intense guy. He got out of the Marine Corps in between my deployments, and I lost contact with him because technology wasn't what it is today. There was no Facebook or anything. So I don't know, 10 years later, finally got in contact with him again via Facebook. Turns out he went back to school with his GI Bill money, and now he's a heart surgeon in the Air Force. And it's literally not the last person I thought would do that, because he's super intelligent, but you can do, there's so many different options. So it's a great opportunity. Keep an open mind.
Can you describe the transition back to civilian life?
Horrible. It was very confusing. I think, early 2000s, just kind of like anything that was happening in the real world was kind of foreign to me. I was in Iraq when the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time, and that sucked, because I would love to be a part of that. We won a bunch of Super Bowls and stuff when I was away, but it wasn't like any pop culture type references weren't relevant to me. I didn't understand anything. So when I was retired because of my injuries, they didn't give me much notice that I was getting retired, and I was living on base. So they said, "You retire at the end of next month. You have to leave the base. See you later." And so we didn't have a place to go. We had to move in with my mother-in-law, which is fine. I actually get along with her. And but I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. I didn't have any real-world job aspects, because anything I could do in the real world, I physically couldn't do because of my back. So there's nothing legal I could do with my training. So it was kind of hard to figure out what I want to do now, because I was going to stay in the Marine Corps for the rest of my life. And also my future got thrown off by that, so it was confusing trying to find myself and figure out what I wanted to do, and then learn how to be not a Marine infantryman all the time. We swear a lot, we act crudely. At the time it was just men only in the infantry, so I dealt with just guys, and so my humor and my sense of being was just all guys in the infantry, and trying to learn how to talk to people properly and not offend everyone. So it was very confusing. It still is, but it was just very confusing.
Can you describe your occupation now?
My job is very boring. I work for the United States Department of Labor. It's some desk work. I manage federal grants that are issued out to different states, 16 different states and territories, like Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, for the Department of Labor stuff. Unemployment is one of them, but there's other things. So we send out through all those, about $10 billion worth of money, and my job is to just kind of track the money, manage it, make sure they're spending it correctly, helping them if they have issues with stuff, which they do a lot, and then helping them through crises like the islands, with the hurricanes that came up last year, Irma and Maria. They kind of devastated the Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands, and so they needed a lot of help getting back on track, helping their workers. So it's way different than what has nothing to do with my military career whatsoever. But I kind of learned how to make some of my skills from the Marine Corps fit into what skills people are looking for in the real world. You kind of have to like reword things, and but it pays the bills, and that's all that matters right now.
What's your view on the war after your time serving?
I don't think of it as in a political type of sense. I didn't think about it at the time. I didn't want it to affect how I acted at the time. And afterwards, I have a lot of friends that have either become activists against it or for it, or everyone just has different views. And I never knew what the general population's view of the war was. And so it's kind of, a lot of people have opinions and they weren't there or didn't see things, and they're wrong. But I don't want to argue with people unnecessarily. I'm not going to change anyone's mind. So I just kind of accept it for what it is, and I just, I did my part. I did what the government told me to do. So I try not to think about it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.